In today's video, we're going to talk about the Camazotz, the lost tribe of the Werebats. I'm going to tell you a little bit about their history. I'm going to tell you how they became a lost tribe and who did it. Hello everyone, welcome to the Maple Table. My name's Nathaniel. This is a channel where we discuss role-playing games, so if that's something you're interested in, I would love to have you join me at the table. So that means do all the fun stuff like hit that subscribe button and that bell notification. The Werebats were known as the Ears of Gaia. They were also messengers of Gaia, not unlike the Corax, and I've done a video on them and I will link that in the description below. What separated the Camazotz from the Corax, in the sense that they were both messengers, the Corax were the type of messenger who, if you gave him a letter, you didn't care about who knew about it, because if you did, the word tended to get around. Coraxes have big mouths, or big beaks. If you wanted something delivered and you wanted it kept secret, you wouldn't go to the Corax, you would go to a Camazot. Some of their own special racial gifts allowed them incredible speed, incredible stealth, and very good listening abilities as well. In the early history of the Fera, the Camazotz were also used as spies. Most notably because of their incredible listening abilities. All you had to do to hear an enemy conversation was get a Camazot in bat form near a conversation of your enemies and they could just tell you everything that they said. Camazotz were a highly social breed as well, and their swarms usually had between 12 and 100 members. And during the tribe's early days, they did maintain a good relationship with many of the other Fera, even though the Camazotz probably knew many of their dirty little secrets. The Camazotz were most concentrated in the southern hemisphere of the planet. This means that when the First War of Rage happened, most of the Camazotz were actually protected from this. Unfortunately, that also meant that the Camazotz who were living in North America, Asia, and Europe, well, they came to an untimely end. The Camazotz were supremely afraid of the werewolves because of their just extreme aggression. And what this meant for the Camazotz is that they didn't actually leave the southern hemisphere for thousands of years. The Werebats, in trying to deal with the extreme oppression that they were feeling from the Garou, they turned to some blood magics, which was not a great thing to do. This opened up their tribe, and those who practiced those specific blood rituals, it opened them up to the Wyrm taint. This particular tribe, and those who practiced the blood magic rituals, I should probably mention that while the tribe itself was experimenting and playing with some pretty dangerous magic, not all of the tribe fell victim to the taint of the Wyrm. In fact, the Camazotz that did, they were hunted mercilessly and put to death. While this wasn't a particularly common occurrence, it was often enough that they did have specific squads of Camazotz that would go out and pursue those who had fallen victim to the call of the Wyrm. Now, in the 17th century, when the Spanish conquistadors came over, and this would have been where the Shadow Lords had actually come into South America, they had heard about the Camazotz and their blood magics as they were exploring this new land, and the Shadow Lords, in all of their brilliance, do you see my sarcasm? They assumed that the Camazotz were actually a new creature from the Wyrm, and they sought to destroy the Wyrm-tainted beasts. It was the Shadow Lords specifically who were able to recruit not only more of their own kind, but also humans as well through some aggressive propaganda campaigns, and they were able to hunt and kill the Camazotz in the Southern Americas. And it was, of course, in the aftermath of the genocide of the Camazotz that their totem of bat fell to the Wyrm. It also kind of went crazy when this happened as well, as I'm sure anyone would when you find out that all of your children or all of your followers have been killed in a genocide. If you're enjoying the video today, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe with those bell notifications so that you get my content when it comes available. Now, back in the early days of the Triat, the Wild, the Wyrm, and the Weaver, when they were all functioning as intended before the Weaver went mad and tried to bind the Wyrm, the Bat Totem, or the Bat Spirit, was actually a servant of the Wyrm, and it was this spirit's job to search the world for other things that had passed and needed to move on. It marked them for removal, and Wyrm came and finished the job. Now, of course, when the Wyrm went crazy because it was bound by the Weaver, the Bat fled the Wyrm's service. It should also be noted that the spirit of Bat was actually one of the most attentive to its children. It bestowed gifts, and it was very forthcoming with advice, very interactive. Part of the reason for this was because of its service to the Wyrm. There was always this tiny piece of darkness that followed the Bat spirit around. And no matter what it did, Gaia could never truly love it or trust it, and neither could any of the other changing breeds. So it found its solace in its children who revered it. And it was this reverence and respect that kept the Bat spirit going. So one might ask, of course, how did the Camazotz come into possession of blood magic? How did they begin to understand these rituals and begin to experiment with them? During the First War of Rage, when the Camazotz were kicked out of the Northern Hemisphere, killed, destroyed, it was the father spirit of Bat who taught his children these blood magic rituals and these tricks to try to give them an edge. Now, unfortunately, this ended up having the opposite effect, and it actually led to the downfall of the Camazotz. The problem with the rituals that were taught to the Camazotz was not that the rituals themselves were tainted, but it did call upon a power that was inherently crazy. A lot of these rituals and the Camazotz themselves found strength in death, and the spirit of death, Wyrm, was fundamentally altered. The Weaver had made it gone mad, so it didn't work as intended, and because of this, some of the Camazotz fell to the mad callings of the Wyrm. Now, the Camazotz did not know that the blood rituals were the source of the taint that they had been experiencing in their tribe. Nor did they know that anyone who participated was exposed or vulnerable to the calls of the Wyrm. With the arrival of the Shadow Lords in the South Americas now hunting the Camazotz to extinction, the Camazotz fled to Australia. The group that had made it to the Australias began fervent prayer, and they were trying to get the attention of their spirit father, Bat. Unfortunately, what was happening with the Bat spirit is when the destruction of his children happened in the South Americas, this was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. The Bat spirit actually divided itself in two in its madness, one with its darkness and loyalty to the Wyrm, the other with its light and loyalty and love to Gaia. And these two sides were actually in conflict with each other and at war. The Camazotz were hoping that their prayer and their ceremony would bring Bat out of this madness and make it whole again. Unfortunately, this did not happen. And it was when the last bats fled or were killed from South America that the Bat spirit fell to the Wyrm, with their father spirit gone, being hunted by the Garou, with their goal being the extinction of the Camazot kind. They were also one of the few changing breeds who were actually able to step sideways, and the remaining Camazotz fled into the Umbra, never to be seen again. I love the Camazotz. They are personally one of my favorite tribes, even though they don't really exist anymore. I just think Werebats are so cool, and their history is so tied to the rest of the changing breeds and how they betrayed them. Shadow Lords specifically, looking at you. This tribe just kind of hits all the right notes for me, and I really enjoy them. There is hope for them. If you wanted to run one in your game, you'll probably be looking at a redemption arc or a redemption story. Having your group of players find the totem of Bat and be able to do a powerful cleansing ritual on it. Maybe even finding some of the Camazotz lost in the deep Umbra. Up on the screen now, I will have a playlist of other changing breeds that I have covered, so if you're interested, please check that out. YouTube will have also picked something it thinks you might like. My name's Nathaniel. You've been watching The Maple Table. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thanks for stopping by, everyone.